Hello, I'm John Brink, and I'm on the Break It Down show
That's
with
right.
Pete.
That's right.
Nice to see you.
I love it. Hey, one of the things I wanted to ask you because we live in this modern world where so many of the old norms are out. Neither of us is the youngest guy in the world, but we still can do very relevant, very modern things to include, just the podcast thing. Having our own media company. When you, when, I know when I think back, if I was to tell 20-year-old Pete where he'd be now, it would all seem like I was an alien from another planet. Like there's no way what you're saying is possible. But when you look back at and then and then you reason with where you are now, does any of this make sense to you?
No, it doesn't really, Pete. And if I look back when I was 20, I was my last year in the Air Force in Holland, and I spent time there. I was drafted into the Air Force. And at the same time, it was not all that long before that. I was born in 1940, so that makes me 85 years old. At my birthday, actually, last Saturday, November the
Happy
1st.
birthday.
Well, thank you. And then, so when I was in Holland, when I was a young fella, about 10, 12 years old, I still remember in our city, about 15,000 people, the first television set came in. And I remember half the city went down there looking outside the windows, looking in, and it was all snowing and saying, oh my God, somebody's moving there and this and that, all of that kind of stuff. And then that obviously was followed by computers. And then much later in the late 70s, early 80s, and the next thing was cell phones and the big shoe one that had to hold virtually with two hands, and then up to that point, and now being in Canada, my family was in Holland. I sent telegrams and saying,
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too. I found a job. I'm making $2 an hour, and I was all excited. And I like it here. Blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And then it took about 2 days. They sent telegram back and blah, blah, blah. Now, with my cell phone, I can push the button and I can see them, speak to them anytime. Is all new. And then obviously the next thing following all of that is AI, artificial intelligence, which they claim will even be more revolutionary than all the other things combined. And I believe that likely is the case. So at 85, I'm trying to keep up. And then
Yeah.
the exciting part for me is one of the things is podcasting around the globe, as both you and I do, and saying, can you believe it that we have podcasting and you a very active podcaster, well over 1,000 podcasts. I
Yeah.
just my number 500 podcast that I'm hosting actually just today, and and then I did about 250 where I'm guest on other people's podcasts and podcasting around the world, and I love it. It's exciting, and I believe that ultimately is the media future as we go forward, podcasting around the world.
Yeah, boy, podcasting around the world. You said a lot there because you just went through like a 80-year timeline, like TVs to everything else. It is, but like we are a media company. Like you have one, I have one.
Correct.
I do a variety of things. I don't have an imprint, but there's a possibility that because of what we do, I can turn myself into a publisher or an imprint under a bigger publisher. Totally possible, and
Correct.
that wasn't possible even 10 years ago to have those kind of connections because 10 years ago podcasts were kind of exploding, but it was nothing compared to where we are now. So anything is possible in media, and I'm almost like choose your adventure. What do you want to do?
Exactly. And then podcasting is still only on its infancy,
Yeah,
although it is amazing where it is going and where it has gone. Pod Match has been very, very important with Alex
absolutely.
Filippo. I actually had him on my podcast just today as my 500th podcast. And he was on that one. And then at the same time, as you said, from a media perspective, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. Already after my 60s, I started becoming not only a podcaster but also an author, a speaker, and doing all kinds of other things. My last book actually is this one that came out in July, and it's already a bestseller on Amazon, $1 billion, and it's all about communication skills. And I believe in the purpose of the book is not necessarily how to become a billionaire, although you can if you wish. But the one thing is critical: you must be a good communicator, and that
Yeah.
communication skills is critical in our lives. And you doing well on that, obviously, and so am I as a podcaster, and then a speaker, and then I'm a storyteller. That's kind of what I do.
Have you always been a storyteller?
I believe so, but although I was not successful academically, I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said to my parents, although they were beautiful people, they said, "What are you going to do with this guy?" And then some people said, "Send him to the mentally challenged school." They said, "No, we're not going to do that. So let's make him a laborer so he can work with his hands because he doesn't appear to be bright enough for anything else." And so that's what I did. I became a furniture maker, and then the other dream that I had is being part of the Second World War, seeing far too much that I shouldn't have seen. And then we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from that point forward, as I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I did, and started with nothing. And then I wanted to build a lumber mill. I did that in a lot of other businesses, but it's not about that. And part of it was also when I came in July of 1965, couldn't speak a language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. And then came off the bus here, where I'm now in northern British Columbia, just grabbing something, a plaque that my employees gave to me. It is, I had counted my money. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I had, positive attitude, still do today. Every day to me is a good day. If you're negative, don't even come close to me. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And then work ethic. I work harder even now than anybody else around me. And I get up at 5:30, always make my bed. And then the other part is I always think I'm late. And so in every day for me, living in North America in particular, spent a lot of times in the United States in business, but also in Canada, is saying I'm the luckiest person in the world. And we are collectively living in North America.
Yeah. Yeah. That is all great. I mean, the passion that we get to work with, because you and I have both worked in hard jobs that aren't fun, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get up when you don't have a job that you enjoy. And not everybody gets to do this. And sometimes you've got to balance. Like I have a lot of friends that work at a refinery, and they're like, "Hey, I work here to make my money, but the second I leave the gate, not that they're not professional, but the second I leave the gate, that job funds the rest of my life. And so I'm safe, I'm comfortable, and I also get to do these really fun things because they make a lot of money. And so they figured out the other way to balance it. We're fortunate to get to work in this space, and then maybe some revenue for ourselves. That's not easy, but here we are doing it.
Exactly.
The other thing I would say is with what we get to do, when people
Oh, I lost the voice. Hey, Pete.
did you hear me?
Now I hear you again. I lost you
Oh,
there
okay.
for.
I was just saying, like, this is also a networking tool, and we can meet anybody. I get to meet you. You don't even live within 1,000 miles of me. And the networking part is so valuable because you get to choose your adventures. So I can meet you. Maybe we do something in business. Maybe we do something as friends. I don't know. And our ages don't matter. Our location in the world doesn't matter. And that's all because of this modern form of media.
I love it, Pete. And it's only on its beginning.
Yeah.
And we already know that the issues are the same no matter where you are. So one day, as you do, I may have somebody in the Philippines, the next day somebody in Australia, the next one somebody in Athens, Greece, or God knows where. And the issues are all virtually always the same.
Yeah. 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 What are the issues?
Well, the issues are, in a lot of cases, is who am I issues. Neurodiversity issues are some that are very more knowledgeable now than they were when I was young. And as you may or may not know, uh, I have, I say the benefit, but others would say the disorder of ADHD and dyslexia. And I wrote a book about that. I call it a superpower. And this is the book that I wrote about it. Is and those kind of issues are things that I may talk about from time to time, but it sometimes comes in my conversations. But many other things may be health, fitness, diet, and careers, as you indicated. I saw a television on a television station of the United States saying that, and I believe Canada is the same. 75% of the population, and you alluded to that are working do not like their jobs.
Yeah.
And probably 70% of the 75% are looking for another job. And that's something that is very critical, and finding your passion is critical. And I say, when I do presentations a lot of times to high schools, colleges, universities, I say to them, sometimes to some of them, saying, okay, what are you going to do after you're finished with this college, university? And a lot of them say, I don't know. And saying, well, it's important, respectfully, to find out, what. Give you an example. You want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver, see what you should do. Should you own the truck? Should you go long haul, short haul, all those things? Or you want to be a contractor, do electric contracting, talk to somebody that is a contractor, or build houses. Talk to somebody. They love to talk to you and think about ideas. Or you want to be a doc, or a lawyer, or for that matter, an entrepreneur. They are always ready to take some time and encourage people to go forward. And I felt I had to write a book about that, and I did that. Finding passion, living the dream. And for me, I started working physically in Holland when I was 12 and a half. And so so I've been working virtually for nearly 60, 70 years already, and saying, are you living the dream, John? I sure am. Every day to me is a special day.
Yeah, boy. Again, you're saying a ton of great things here. I love it. The just in our world, again, how do you monetize? You get ads? I'm like, well, maybe. But one of the things that, at least in terms of how I work it, is I'm always displaying my ability to produce something, right? And I worry about production over perfection. Hey, this show might be a little thorny. You know what? It's going to be fine, because there'll be another one tomorrow, and you don't get perfect every day. And I'm not going to slow down and chase perfection. That's the jobs of big studios. They have time, they have budget. Here, we just get out, we get to work, and we go, there it is. It's like you work out, I work out. Some days the best workouts are the hardest workouts, where you're like, I just could, like the other day. Matter of fact, yesterday I was fasting before Thanksgiving, and I went to go and I do jujitsu, and I just could not keep energy in my body. I just was struggling, and what a workout! And today I'm so sore in all these places, because I was pushing through the adversity of just and I don't know if you guys know the term bonk. I was bonking at the end of my workout, though. I had a runner's high, from doing that and putting myself in that zone. And so I felt great, hard workout, right? And so that's the production over perfection thing. What are your thoughts on I'm going to leave you to say this too. The next time I talk to someone and they're like, how do we get a podcast? The first thing I say is, you don't need a podcast, because it's not for everybody. It's not for every company. But if you do want to do one, here's how we do it, and I'll charge you this amount of money, and then the companies reliably go, yeah, we'll go on that ride with you. And maybe it's a $10,000 ride, which sounds like a lot, not that much, because there's a lot of work involved, but that's what we get to do, is get out, go, and like get rid of the fear of what's going to happen with this podcast. We don't know what we're doing. Like, stop worrying about the things that belong to me. I know how to make this happen. You see what I do every day. I'll do that for you. Whatever you guys want it to look like, it'll look like. But that's what that looks like. Get out of the way and let's go do this and see if this benefits your company. And by the way, if you think it's just communicating, you're wrong. Again, it's networking. It's a sales tool. Imagine, and I'm going to shut up here, I swear to God, John, but if I approached a company and I said, who are your 10 dream targets for your company? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. Well, let's bring each of them onto your podcast, or better, bring them onto my podcast, even softer. and then you sit in there with me, and that generates revenue. So there's a lot of ways to do this thing.
I agree with you, Pete. And, so what I say a lot of times is the media as we know it, the CNNs, the ABCs, and in Canada, the CBC, and in Europe, the BBC, their viewer side is being reduced further and further and further. What is taking over is podcasting. And so the key for my podcasting, it is from the heart. It's sincerity. Here and there, a little hiccup doesn't really matter. It's all part of, like what you and me are doing. This is the second time that we've met, actually. But and we already have a lot of things in common, and I like it. And then the other part that I do with people that ask me about podcasting is be predictable. Do not start and stop and start and stop. Do whatever makes you feel comfortable. And then, as I have done many podcasts, what I was saying, 500 on where I'm the host, and another 250 where I'm a guest on somebody else's, is that what I do with the podcast that I host, they are usually about an hour. They are from the heart. Whatever happens, happens. And I release them within, I do not edit them. I release them within 2 hours. That's what I do with all my podcasts.
And we're live here, and same philosophy, right? And I am not going to spend any time in now I say this, there are exceptions, like if I get right, if I have an older person on who struggles to hear or is still relevant but not as presentable as they once were, I will gently edit some of the. I'm not, this doesn't apply to you, but there are people who just have less capacity. Doesn't mean that they're not relevant, doesn't mean that they're not capable. It's just you got to give them the grace of a little bit of editing to take out some of the, because this is new technology. A lot of folks haven't kept up, and
so
produce it, get it out the door.
You say the older ones at 85. Am I old enough? Or no, I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, but in this case, the person I'm thinking of, you're not even within 10 years of them, right? And so I had a World War II veteran. He's no longer with us, but he would tell his stories in a circle.
Yeah.
And so you would have to gently edit out. The story was there, but his capacity. So he still was relevant. That guy got on an airplane, flew out to the Battle of the Bulge remembrance, for the 75 years. So he can still do things. It's just his way was not the direct way anymore, and so we did him the honor of taking the time to edit that. But you and I, we're pros, and so we're just going to go forward, and whatever happens, happens.
Exactly. And I like it. So the other part that you touched on briefly is exercise, fitness. I'm fit. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. I'm going to show you a picture of me, a book that I wrote, Living Young, Dying Old. And this is a picture of me. I was competing bodybuilding and physique in 2018. Did bodybuilding in northern British Columbia, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, then provincially did the same. That qualified me for the nationals and qualified me also for the Arnolds. And then COVID came, and now again I'm training, and that's how I look today, is again training and getting ready for 2026 for the Arnolds as well. And so what it is fitness. Physical fitness, critically important. Diet, as you well know, critically important. And then at the end of the day, what is it all about? Quality of life, as long as you can, and stay active mentally, physically, diet awareness, and all of those things.
Yeah. By the way, everybody, I've been putting the links up to John's books as he reps them. I'm throwing them up here, so you can get these books on Amazon. And you know what I always say, buddy, read, buy 2. Books are great gifts. It's the giving season, so there's the link for Living Young, Dying Old. That's a good thing. Yeah, it's terrifying watching. We've got older people in our family that are, wrapping up their life, and so they're not escapable. And it's terrifying seeing where you can end up and realizing, it's a lottery of sorts, but you can invest in your well-being. I certainly am guilty of not always doing that. I've been a fairly physical person my whole life, but I'm having another renaissance where I'm working out, I'm getting strong. I'm trying to add to that, but and I'm curious what you think about this. My body is pretty beat up from a lot of combat. And
Sure.
so I have to be very careful, very deliberate, which kind of goes against my younger self. But my younger self also is the one going, you love exercise, you love fitness, you love doing, jujitsu. Remember that. So sometimes I find myself looking at the clock, John, and I'll go, okay, 25 minutes left. And then I remind myself, man, only 25 minutes left. Cause I love that hour of physical fitness I get when I go to the dojo or whatever it is. I, so it's a mindset thing for me as much as anything else. And I definitely want to keep going because I have the ability to control that. If something else bad happens, stroke, whatever it is, like, hey, some of that's going to happen. But if I can invest in my well-being, gosh, there's not many things more valuable than that.
Yeah, and so Pete, and I agree with all of that. So for me, I go 4 times to the gym. I train with a trainer. I work very, very hard going to the gym. Some people go there and they have their cell phones and they do chatting. I don't. I go there to work and I work hard. And then the other part, I'm very conscientious about diet, exercise, and then mental fitness. And all of
Mm,
that is possible. And a lot of people do not like going to the gym or doing physical exercise. You don't have to become an Olympian or you don't have to become a bodybuilder, but at least be active. Even if you initially start working with a partner of some sort or another, go for a walk.
yeah.
A half an hour a day, and then be careful about diets. So what I do, my wife is a vegetarian. I'm probably 80-10, 90-10
Mhm.
now. And I do all the shopping at the grocery store. When I go to a grocery store, I go to the grocery store and I shop on the outside, on the inside of the grocery store. On the aisles is usually processed food or super processed. If I don't know what is in it, it's likely not good for us. And
Yeah.
so I'm very conscientious of that particular part. And then mentally, I stay active as well because of podcasting. But at the same time, I have 10 different companies that I'm doing work in, and then other things that always keeps me active. But I like the podcasting part of it because you have to be mentally proactive. And all those things that I mentioned, including to the gym, what will happen if you do that initially and go through it. I love going to the gym. And then what will happen, somebody will see you and say, hey, Pete or John, you look good. What are you doing? And so it becomes very rewarding.
Yeah.
Uh, because at the end of the day, as I said earlier, is quality of life is the most important. I see so
Mm.
many people hands full of pills that are likely toxic in a way and may help one thing, but don't are not good for your body. I try not to do that, and look at all the things that go into my body that I know what it is and why it is, and not become addicted to medical things that are not good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, another powerful mouthful of words. I don't most of the time, 90+% of the time, I don't need an alarm clock to wake up. I wake up refreshed.
I
I've
feel that.
focused on sleep. Sleep's important for me. I am a napper and it's all right. No one, you're welcome to judge me on my naps. I'm still going to take one. And so I love what I get to do. I'm always excited about it. Do I have negative feelings? Do I get down on myself? Is it, do I always need more money? Yes, yes, yes. All those things, right? It's not perfect. And sometimes it's terrifying. I'm on that tightrope and I'm like, oh my God, I need another $1,000. But then I think, okay, how do I get another $1,000? And I find people and I'm like, hey, what can I do for $1,000? And then quite often they're like, oh, Pete, you're awesome. Hey, forget that. Let's do this. And all of a sudden it's not 1,000, it's 2,000 or whatever. And I'm not a wealthy man, but John, I've got enough money today to do what I'm trying to do. I can always put more money to work, but that acceptance, that realization that I have enough money to keep myself protected, covered, and happy has unleashed a lot of positivity that was bound up by because like anybody else, if I don't have enough money, I freak out. I get depressed. I want to die.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, no alarm clock. That should shock a lot of people because they're like, oh my God, I can't even get up when the alarm goes off, and I'm not even using one.
Yeah, interesting that you say that, Pete, because I don't use alarm clock either. But I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. But I try to sleep at least between 7 and 9 hours a night. and so that to me is critically important. The other part that I do is when I wake up, I take about 10 ounces of water. I
Mhm.
put that in my body before I put anything else in. That's important to me. And then I'm very careful about my breakfast. I usually have 3 or 4 boiled eggs with an avocado. That's my breakfast. Then I go to the gym usually about mid morning. That fits my schedule from what I'm doing with my companies, and then stay there for an hour. Then have a super protein drink for lunch, and then something more protein at the end of the day, and that's my day. And that's what I do. And
That's
so,
great.
now the other part that, and I know you're podcasting me, but I just want to run by you is that
Hmm.
we have a lot of things in similarity.
Yeah.
PTSD is one because I grew up during the war years, saw far too much that I should not have seen. You spent about 70 months deployed in the combat zones,
Yeah.
completing at least 1,000 missions outside the wire. And I know what it means. Explain to people what the wire is and outside of the wire. I was, part of the Dutch Air Force and the security forces in particular.
Yeah.
I know what it means, but maybe explain it to us. And has that become the foundation of you, the 70 years deployed in the combat zones?
Yeah. Yeah.
Than the other 1,000 missions. Explain to us what that meant to the rest of your life. Did that lay the
Yeah.
foundation? And what is the
Yeah,
why?
it's huge. I got to meet people in a lot of different conditions in a lot of different places. And so I might be told, oh, this country is like this. And I'm like, I mean, you'd have to go there. You'd have to go there and meet 1,000 people, before you had a sense for what that region, So, yeah, whenever I'm told something by somebody else who's never done anything, I respect that they have an opinion about it, but yeah, I've met real farmers who didn't have enough money. I've met real war-torn people whose lives have been destroyed. And look, this is America, right? Like, and I'm going to encircle North America, so I'm putting Canada in there with us. We can fix any of these individual problems like that. Not even a rounding error, a fart, and it's just money but we don't. And so I look at that and I think, oh my gosh, how can I illustrate some of this? And that's partly what the show is. And my career, I was a spy. And so I'd write reports like I met an old lady who, has a cow and that's it. And she has no roof. She has parts of 2 walls. She's always my example, I think, about an actual lady. And a terrible reputation in town because she has no way to make money. So she's in this culture seen as a whore and probably is, because how else are they surviving, right? Can't we're going to let all these people into our country here in the US. Can't we just let this lady come and then get her subsidized and get her going in the right direction? Like, she's not going to make it here. This is horrible, right? So that's what it is to be outside the wire, is to see the reality of what that ground is. Because inside the wire, and again, I'll say, it's America, it's Canada, it's US, it's air conditioning, it's electricity, it's food aplenty. We're working out in the gyms. It's new for us in our lifetimes to see as many people working out, as that work out now. And then you go to rock and you see them just like with whatever they can find, car parts, and they're curling, right? And they're repping things. You're like, these guys want to be like this. And if you imagine, like, they're going in the right direction, how do you foster that? How do you help them build that gym? We're always trying to turn them into small motor mechanics. I'm outside the wire. I see that guy. He's got a gym. Imagine when jujitsu gets there and people start learning this gentle art. Oh my gosh, right? But we don't ever focus on these things. So when you go outside the wire, you're in their world, their actual world. And so, like, if I was to deploy and be in Holland or anywhere in the Benelux area, during World War II, that would be the real world. You got to leave this protected, hyper scared, terrified threat world to go to the real world. It's still a dangerous place, but that's what going outside the wire really is you're leaving Disneyland, the dome of American protection. And it's wonderful in there. I love it too. But the reality is where the work is, where the challenges are, man, that's when you go and you want to talk to the most practical, wise people. Go talk to farmers. There's no farmer in Holland or in Canada or in the US. I mean, imagine talking to farmers out in Calgary area, ranchers. They are going to be practical and they're going to tell you what's going on. And if you want to know how to help them, ask them. that's that to me is what really the essence of going outside the wires, and it does shape me every day, John, with what I do. Is like back during Joe Biden's presidency, we were having a problem down on the border down in Del Rio, Texas, and he tasked our vice president to go out there and go deal with this. She didn't go, and I'm like, well, I'll go. This is America. I'm going to get in my truck, and I drove there, and I interviewed the judge who was responsible for all of the international border crossing stuff. And I did that, right, because I can, and that's what I do, right? So even here in America, I can deploy myself to go, well, what is actually going on here? And then you find out, and it's not a political thing, it's a people thing, and what he's concerned with and what his problems are and why he approaches them the way he does. Because in this case, this judge was, he was put into a spot that he was elected to help with all these things. He's like, I didn't anticipate this problem. This is a federal problem, not a city problem. So that's what, for me, going outside the wire means in this modern sense. But, yeah, it's born out of combat.
And so that gave you the foundation, that gave you the footing, that is who you are. And I remember that well myself, being saying far too much during the war years, PTSD, the inner child still part of me. And then seeing really Europe during the 1940s when Hitler decided that Poland should become part of Germany. It was obvious that he would go further in that, likely Holland and the other countries. And so for my mom and dad, married in 1938, their two kids were in paradise, they thought. And then my dad was called into the Dutch army. And the last time that they saw him just before the bombing of Rotterdam. And for 5 years, they wouldn't know if he lived or died. So it was tough go for my mom. She was pregnant with me, two kids, no food, going into the railroad yards with gunny sacks, pick up anything edible and burnable. But the real point that I was going to make is that in 1944, when the Allied forces, the United States, the Canada, UK, together landed in Normandy and at great cost started liberating Europe, and the Americans went east and south, and the Canadians went north through France, Belgium, Holland. And our family was in the northeastern part of Holland, 15 minutes from the German border, and we saw far too much that we should not have seen, but it's still very much part of my life. But the other part, I believe, what was important, and to what your views are, is that in 1997, 1998, the United States, together with other countries, but under the leadership of the United States, they formed a Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe. And I believe that is exactly what you and me are referring to, that together we are immensely powerful between the United States, Canada, and to certain things also Mexico, that are so powerful, that have so many resources complementary to each other. And I believe that part was very, very important. And sometimes, without trying to become political, is that has disappeared a little bit. Yeah. I hope it will come back. And then the other part in the United States, obviously, although I'm in Canada, I'm doing a lot of business in the United States, became knowledgeable about it. I love the Constitution of the United States, where it starts with "we the people," and at the end of the day, that is what it is all about.
Yeah, we the people, man. Yeah, that's right. And so there is a higher standard, right? We do know that, how many people like your mom didn't make it through the war with everybody intact? None of them made it because they starved or they got sick or they survived, but that damage that you all took stayed with them in a way that, you just don't get to pick, right? You're trying to fight through whatever adversity you get put in front of you. And I'm not saying you need to give people charity for things, but
No.
Like we had this kid that showed up at our office. We have a thing called walk-ins, and this kid walks in, and he'd been working with a team like us before. And I can see he's in physical distress. He's like sweating, and he's not a threat. He's just this little kid. And my peers who are less experienced than I am, they're interrogating him, right? Because he doesn't really belong to them. And so they're trying to figure out what he's doing, and they're being pretty aggressive. And I'm like, hold on a second here. And I'm like, this is very rare. You're not supposed to take over someone's meeting, but I needed to do this because I'm the senior person in there, even though I have no authority. I know this job better than they do. And I said, ask him what's wrong with him, because he's got his hand on his stomach and he's kind of rocking. I can see he's in physical distress. They're like, oh yeah, I will. And they're like, yeah, he was shot a while back and he is not feeling well. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then he showed us his wound, right? And he'd been fixed up by us, but now he had developed an infection in his torso. And I'm like, hey, this kid's going to die. And he's not going to die while I'm here. We're taking him to the hospital. Well, we're not allowed. And I'm like, I don't care. This kid's going to the hospital. And if the doctors want to release him, that's on them. But I have to make sure, like, this is no longer an intel operation. This is a humanitarian operation. And
Yeah.
you guys, they were in the Army. I was working for the Army. And so I grabbed him, put him in my car, drove him around the airport, which is where we were, and took him to the clinic. And I said, hey, this kid's messed up. And they're like, oh, that's that kid. Yeah, we have his record. We actually were hoping he would follow up. And I'm like, well, he is following up now. And yeah, sure enough, like he had this infection. He was really, really sick and not quite on the edge of death's door, but he was racing there fast, right? But that's the thing is, like, what condition is that kid in now? And if we would have just kicked him off the camp and said, we're not interested in talking to you, not our source, maybe he would have died, because he's in a place where it's hard to get a simple treatment, antibiotics, and maybe for him it was harder later on down the line, but this is something that we know how to fix. So when I think about your mom and having to go to the rail yard and find anything burnable, anything eatable, and put it in a pot and turn it into, some food. Yeah, we have so much. We definitely can do better than that. And we'll give another person $500,000 to do nothing performative. Like, oh, this is, and I've seen it. Like, this is the park I made, and I'm like, I was here 2 weeks ago. That's the same park. And so this guy gets $500,000 because he has favor, but that mom who's at that rail yard, I want to find that person, John. That's what I would do, is like, hey, you think you're building a government, but you gave money to someone who everybody now thinks is an asshole. His life is now in danger. There's a mom over here who nobody cares to do anything for and is in terrible shape. And so these are the things that I look at and I see and I hear in a different way now, because when I'm told, like, oh, this is this and this is that, I'm like, nah, I'm sure that isn't the case. We can do better, but we have to be principled. We have to go out and do the work. You have to expose yourself to danger, etc. So says Pete. I'm shutting up now.
No, and I agree with you, Pete, because and that's what outside of the wire means, really having had exposure to the reality of war or distress of some form or fashion. And as you indicated, is that, when my brother, my sister, but the one was 1 year older, the other 2 years older than me, every morning the three of us would go into the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. The reason that we did is because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, the Buddhist one, but we'd be back the following morning. And to feel, I even now, 80 years later, I can still feel hunger as it was then, and still visualize the people being shot in front of our house and all of the other things. And, so it always stays with you. And to some people that believe that once the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It simply doesn't. It may take generations. PTSD will stay part of it. For myself, the inner child, the little kid, like 4 or 5 years old, that the fear of losing that one parent that we had always kind of stayed with me. I got counseling for that actually in my 50s, very emotional actually. And all of those things are, but you relating to as part of your foundation is also part of mine. And so that sensitivity to understanding and taking everything for granted is saying, give me this, give me that. But to seeing some of this outside of the wire that will stay with you, but also gives you the foundation of being more sensitive and finding things like the little boy that was shot and developed an infection, which likely would have killed him eventually, but saying, no, this is not what I'm going to do. You are proactive, so am I. Or making the decision, go to the Texas border and saying, I want to find out for myself.
Yeah. I'm going to find out for myself. How do you take that wisdom that you've accrued? I mean, obviously 85 years, but also, you've done a lot of things. You have this show. I mean, we're wisdom magnets. And so I'm repeating other people's wisdom. just now when you asked me that question about outside the wire, I normally make it sexy and talk about combat because that's also part of it, but also relating it to the America Disneyland bubble that I'm in, where you can't make good decisions, and going out into the real world. I'm struck by this, John. So we're going to go on a patrol and we're doing all of our security checks. Is there a round in the chamber? Are our electric countermeasures, going? And it's all coded military talk. But, are we safe? Do we have our stuff? How many people do we have? Okay, all these things. And then as we're driving out in our armored Humvees, walking alongside of us is a woman and her daughter, just regular people, and we're doing all this safety check and making sure that we're combat ready. And they're simply just living their lives, and that juxtaposition is, it's hard to explain. So how do you take the wisdom that and experience that you've accrued and make it relatable so that someone has an opportunity to act on it?
Yeah, so it becomes part of who you are, unique on that foundation, difficult to explain necessarily to others. I do that very often. In fact, what I do is I believe I have an obligation to share it with others. November the 11th is Remembrance Day. So during that week, I make sure always that I have 2 or 3 different schools where I give presentations to share with them. What does it mean? 2 minutes of silence and why? And so I did that again, a couple of weeks ago, obviously, for 2 schools actually, and very emotional even for me, where I have close to 1,000 students right up to grade 12, and the teachers a lot of times said, "Oh, we'll never keep them silent because we can't even keep 20 of them silent in the classroom." You could have heard a pin drop. So they know, they understand, and they want to know. And I believe it is important from my perspective to share with them how fortunate we are for all the things that we have, but also how quickly it can change, and it will affect your life, not only the people listening to you, but families, sometimes for generations, as it has in the areas where you were in combat, as I saw in Holland during the 1940s and then the post-war years, all of that. And I believe I have an obligation to share that with others, as you do with your experience, your combat experience, and being outside of the wire and acting on it.
Yeah. Holland went back to normal pretty fast. Normal, whatever normal is, right? If you're in a place that's just conflict ridden and is constantly in tumult, it's a different world altogether, even still. So that paradigm is like, okay, yeah, Holland went back and, it's a great country with great people. So is country X, but they don't have the stability that we've all been afforded too. And it's easy for us to put our assumptions about their problems and the solutions to those problems in a box and say, here you go, this is from America. There you go. Open the box up and it'll be fine. And so what happens is we export problems in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Things that we think are important. And I'll just use, gender ideology, whatever the gender thing is. If you bring that to a place where like, no, you understand, I might kill my neighbor today and he might kill me. We'll worry about that problem in 50 years. You guys are adorable little babies. That has nothing to do with what's going on here, right? And me saying this, I'm making a bigger statement about us, not about the ideology of gender. Who cares about that? Like, that's not the thing that's relevant here. But that problem is so minuscule in their world, it doesn't exist. But we often take these things and we highlight them, and they're like, hey, I'm trying to control disease in my chicken farm. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't got time for that.
Exactly.
What do we do? How do we deal with that? How do we, it didn't have to be combat, it didn't have to be, but how do we deal with this problem of we bring a problem to somebody by exporting this expectation that isn't real? How do we get better at doing that? So we kind of tend to our own stuff.
Accept, in a lot of cases now, our politicians, and I'm not talking about the United States, but politicians in a general sense do not have the experiences that you and me had that were difficult and challenging, but still became a foundation of who we are today. and probably can recognize those things better than most others. And the other ones situation, a lot of times they say, well, make it like America or Canada or the free world, if you wish, or the democratic world, if you wish. And that is so. So if I look at it, collectively, and looking at Europe in particular, or the EU, if we have countries like Russia, in the Ukraine, obviously the terrible things in the Middle East and other places, and then see dictatorships like North Korea, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, and I can just go on and on and on. We are very, very fortunate in a democratic rule, but we have to try to understand that and the information is available to many now using Google, AI, and all of those things. Is that some of these countries where you were in combat are very complex because of either religion in a lot of cases, culture in a lot of cases, the understanding what relationships are, male versus females, and all of those things. And they cannot change that overnight to our model, and not suggesting that our model, meaning in the free democratic world, if you wish, is so perfect either, because we have differences in our countries about politics and all the other things. And I'm not going to go too deeply into politics, but all I want to say is that Canada is very boring politically compared to the United States as it is right now in this world. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that do not try to believe as politicians in the United States, Canada, in the democratic rules, that we just go down there and we say, do what we are doing. That's not so, because for hundreds of years, they developed cultures that are different than what we would do or what we are doing. And they are, relatively speaking, comfortable with it, but they become messy, especially, if you look at some of these countries that have so many differences in terms of cultures, in terms of language, religion, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, man, you said a lot of great things there. What a chat, man. This is wonderful. I love it. You're 85. When you look ahead, how far ahead are you looking? I mean, forget about the fact that like your 90s are looming, but like, are you thinking 3 months? Are you living day to day? How do you see the future?
I'm an optimist. So the key for me is to stay healthy, fit, mentally, physically, diet, sleep, all those things that we talked about. That's the first thing, because if I don't have my health or fitness, then all the other things, no matter what I want to do, become an issue. So that's a one. And then I have no expectations of making a whole lot of money or do any of that kind of stuff. I just want to have, as I indicated to you, Pete, I usually wake up at 5:30. I don't use an alarm clock. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And then the first thing that I do when I walk outside, I say I'm in paradise, and that's how I feel, and that's how I look forward. And so whatever that may be, that's what I'm doing. My podcasting, the companies that I'm involved in, I always try to give back to the community. I believe it's very important, and I've always done that, and I will do that. In terms of age, tongue in cheek, I said I want to be 120, but that obviously, but realistically, quality of life is the most valuable piece that you have, and that taking care of the body is extremely forgiving, but you can only abuse it for so long, and then it starts to affect all the other things, including quality of life.
You have had a long and colorful life, no matter what. If something, a calamity, a bit of medical stuff that's just unpreventable, our bodies start to fail at some point, no matter what we do. Have you done enough? And then if you have done enough, why do you keep going so hard forward?
Yeah, that's I like that, Pete. So what I usually do, my wife, myself, we do every 18 months, I have an MRI, so a full body MRI. I think that's the right thing to do. I try to have 2 blood tests a year, and So, and I'm very conscientious about diet and all the other things that we talked about, sleep and water, and so, but being proactive and obviously the medical profession is changing
Yeah.
substantially here. There's a shortage of docs, and there is a shortage of this and all the other things. But we can be more aware of our bodies and be conscious. Become consciousness of that, and then the stay positive is a very, and stress is something I try to
Mhm.
but stress has been a big part of my life, and I believe it or not, I developed the skill sets most of the time to manage that, because it
Yeah.
became right from the time I left Holland. Even before that, during the Second World War, already as a young kid, it was always about food. They're concerned about my mother ending up, saw people being dragged out of their houses, shot in front of our house, and all of that kind of stuff. And then schooling, medical, I was not a good student, obviously, and then going to Canada, studying with nothing, at $25.47, and then had the dream of building companies. A lot of stuff that had stress
Yeah.
involved. But I always stayed involved in the community to a certain extent and be
Yeah.
aware of all the things, knowledgeable about being outside of the wire, what it
Hmm.
is, and then being here and being always knowledgeable about what it could have been or what it can be if I would have been in other places.
Mm. Yeah. We get to do a lot of things. We get to choose our adventure. And there are things that I like to do, and there are things that I don't like to do. And it turns out the things I don't like to do, I still need to do, but I don't like to do them. And so it's harder to get those things done. I've got this ticket that I've got to pay sitting right here on my desk. So I pay it today. I could have paid that thing 2 weeks ago. It's the easiest. It's easier than ever to pay a ticket. All I've got to do is with my phone, scan this thing, boop, boop, done. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's how do we make ourselves another example. This is great. So one of our friends lives by that person's self, and so the house is less kept up. That person has two jobs trying to keep up with bills and everything, and so we all know like that person needs help. We could go there and have a cleaning party in their house and just give 2-3 hours of our time, and the house would be in a world better shape, right? But overwhelmed by life, and so it's easier for me, and I don't like cleaning at all, to go to that person's house to help them clean for 2 or 3 hours than to tend to my own stuff for 2 or 3 hours. How do we get that? How do we figure that out, John, to where we do the things that we must do, but we absolutely do not like to do?
Yeah, so interesting question, Pete. And I have, all the things that you're saying, I have that too. Some people say to me, "How come you can do all the things that you're doing? You do all the podcasts and writing books and have 10 different companies, blah, 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 and all the other kind of stuff. How do you do it?" I say, "It's ADHD. That's how I do it." And
Need to get me some of that ADHD.
I said, and to me, obviously, I have ADHD and dyslexia, and I call it a superpower, or
Yeah.
it can be a superpower, and it is for me, where I focus on the things that are critically important. The other ones I get to whenever I do, if I do, and so. So my views on things are somewhat different from a, if you wish, normal person or a
Hmm.
person the frequency of occurrence of ADHD and dyslexia and all those kind of things much higher than people first anticipated. But that's a whole different show.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I want to wrap some stuff up here. So, for everybody who's interested in John's work, you can always go to his website. It's already in the links here, but I'm going to put it on the page here for you one more time. Just raw right there. Look, it's pretty simple. John A. Brink. And then everything ties into that. The books, I'll just run through these links for you guys just so you can be reminded. First off, we talked about Podmatch, which we both love. And by the way, you notice that's a clean link. There's no Pete making money. There's no John making money. That's just we believe in this. If you want to be a better guest or to guest on things at all, if you want to have a show and you're like, how do I book guests? Right here. Here's where you can get all that help. And again, no affiliate anything there. That's just the pure and honest. And I know John shaking his head because he agrees, right? We love
Absolutely.
this service. So billion-dollar communication skills, 100% right. The better you communicate, the clearer you, that you clean your path up towards things. And then we're going to go to ADHD Unlock, the superpower John just mentioned. But bam, there's the one for that. Thank you very much. And then how about that passion? You got to find your passion and figure out what to do with it, whether you're balancing things out outside the wire. There it is right there. Finding your passion, living the dream, not having to wake up with an alarm clock. And then living young, dying old. There's the link for that one. And I believe we've got, no, that's it. That's the pile. Against all that, let me make that one for you right now. Why don't you chat here while I make your link for you on that one, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
So Against All Odds is, people said for years and years to me, you should write a book about you had such an interesting life. And I tried. Writing books is not easy. I went through all the ups and downs. And so I tried for about 20 years to write a book. And then I knew about 6-7 years ago, when I already was in my 70s, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I started writing it Against All Odds. It took me 80 years to live and 20 years to think about it, and then 2.5 years to write it. It's all about ups and downs and staying the course.
Staying the course. Yes, that goes back to getting things done you just simply need to do. Hey, everybody, there's that link down below. Anything in closing for you to wrap us up? If nothing else, in the season of thanks, I am thankful for you. I'm hoping that, because we may be going up towards Seattle, which is close-ish to where you're from. And if I get that close, man, I'll make the extra effort to get up there and visit. But what do you want to close with?
Again, give back to the community. Be sensitive to those that are not as fortunate as you. That's the most important one. Stay fit, stay healthy, and have a passion. Because if you don't, then there is no purpose. Find a passion in life. Give back to the community is the most important one.
All right, everybody. I will see you all on Monday. John, I'll come say goodbye to you in a second. All of you, I'm thankful for all of you that watch and complain about me. I'm thankful for all of it. It really, I was having this thought, this is legit thought, John, is when you reached a level of success where people hate you and want to mock, like, look at people that mock my show. I don't know about your show, but people are like, oh, you're the podcaster. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so great. I got someone that hates me so much. And if they only knew how wonderful this experience is,
Yeah.
It's funny. All right. So I'm going to hang up here, everybody. So I will talk to you all soon. And John, I'll talk to you in a sec. Bye-bye.